Income, the Musicians Council podcast. Art to Income is a resource for learning from the Musicians Council where you can learn to navigate the modern music industry. We're here to teach you anything from production to management, PR, songwriting, any facet of the music industry. This is the place to get face-to-face with experts. So I'm here with one today who is somebody I just think the world of from Nashville, Tennessee. This is Veneble. She is the Director of Development from Centric Entertainment. Hi, Allie.
Hi. How's it going?
Great. I'm so happy to have you on here with us. Let me put my glasses on so I can see you and what's happening. So I'm so happy to have you here. And I want to just start by telling our audience of people that first and foremost, the reason you're gonna learn a lot about Allie right now, but the reason Allie is who Allie is and where she is Allie is one of the most inspirational people I've ever met in the entertainment industry. And I mean that very sincerely. Allie brings inspiration to everybody around her, and that's why she's constantly in the middle of great things happening. So I'm so happy to have you here today. And I'm so just happy for all the things you've been doing and all the work you're doing in Nashville. So I met Allie going back a little ways now when she was working at Iconic Entertainment as day-to-day manager for Kelsea Ballerini. Yep. But let's rewind a little bit before that. And I understand you were a vocalist first and went to school on a scholarship you went to school for music business, but you weren't on a vocal scholarship.
Yeah, so I am originally from California, Southern California, right outside of LA. And just kind of was that kid that was always involved in a lot of things, sports, music, didn't really know what I wanted to do. Randomly, my sophomore year of college, went to visit my cousin at this random school called Lee University. It's a liberal arts school in Cleveland, Tennessee, which is the middle of nowhere. So it was big culture shock for me coming from a big city. And ended up auditioning and just kind of found my way there, transferred. So it was a big leap of faith, never been to Tennessee before. And yeah, I sang in an a cappella group, which I had never been part of that world. And it's a world if you know a cappella. And yeah, the group I was singing with had a lot of accolades in that world. So I guess it was a really big deal that I made it, and I had no idea, which I think was cool. Like I actually was a red shirt at first, which means like I was on the bench for 6 months because there were only 4 spots in the line for a girl and 4 spots for a guy. So it was a very elite group, quote unquote. And until the top soprano quit the group, then I was able to sing in the line. Like it was really intense. So yeah, I
called for our YouTubers. What's it called?
The what? Voices of Lee.
Voices of Lee. So it was actually part of the university. It was a school group. That's really cool.
Yeah, so it was like vocal boot camp. I mean, we would rehearse 5 days a week. I had a full class schedule. We toured every weekend on a bus. So that was my first experience on tour bus. We would go every weekend.
Real deal. It was actually touring, traveling, the whole thing.
Yeah, so it was pretty intense. Yeah, so that kind of gave me my on the road experience, I guess you could say at first. And then after college, I just kind of had some life stuff happen where 3 years was in a bad relationship. Long story short, kind of sold apartments just to get by, and ended up in Nashville though to visit a friend. And while I was there, he was like, "Hey, do you want to go interview tomorrow?" I was like, "Sure, for what? I love interviews." And it was for the company Paradigm, which is one of the largest booking agencies in the world.
Yeah, of course.
And so again, just happenstantially, again, I had worked really hard. I studied music, so I was aware, but these opportunities really, it was very fortunate that the timing happened in my life this way. So I worked at Paradigm, ended up moving myself to Nashville, and was an assistant in the Christian music department. Okay. And so I booked like Lecrae, the 116 Crew, Mercy Me, Phil Wickham, like, you know, CCM World, like all of those guys. And I was always that girl that kind of did things and then said sorry after. So I started booking very quickly as an assistant and just kind of started doing it without permission, and ended up getting promoted into the club division where I started booking smaller bands on the West Coast and filling in dates for bigger acts. So yeah, that was kind of my like initial entrance into Nashville.
And how long did you stay there?
I was there about 3 years.
And what did you leave there and go to Iconic?
Yeah, so Fletcher Foster, he's amazing. He's a legend in the industry. He comes from the label world. He ran marketing during the Bodyguard record, which is crazy.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, he's very much accredited for like Keith Urban's development at the beginning. So he's just amazing. And he moved from the label world to management at Red Light. He was the GM here at in Nashville. And he is accredited for like Alabama's Comeback, and he was managing them at the time. He was also managing this really cool group called the Mavericks. Do you know the Mavericks?
Of course.
Yeah. So I was on the booking team for the Mavericks.
Okay, of course.
And so that's how him and I linked up. Didn't know him very well. He was like the mayor of Nashville. Everyone loves and adores Fletcher. Like he's just one of those magnetic, powerful people in town. He could be the mayor for sure. Yeah. And he hit me up out of the blue, and he was just like, hey, I'm starting my own management company. You want to come be a manager? And I was just like, first of all, why are you asking me out of everyone?
Hold on. He didn't hit you up out of the blue. He hit you up because you worked with Mavericks and he was working with them. Yes. Is that right? So he hit you up because you were really inspiring, and he spotted you and went, this is a person I want on my team.
Yeah, it's funny. I got invited to his Christmas party that year before he hit me up for the job. And he has this beautiful house. It's unreal. And so we just struck up this really cool conversation about, I do a word a year, just kind of as like something to check myself against every year and grow as a person. And I think that's why I got the job. I'm not even joking you, because he loved that conversation.
That's really clever. What was the word? Do you remember?
Oh gosh. That year, I think my word was forward, because I was actually going through a divorce. And so that was my like inspiration of moving forward.
Yeah. What is it this year?
This year, my word is able.
Able.
Yeah. It's kind of a no excuses word, which is terrifying, but.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk for a minute about the Kelsea Ballerini years.
Yeah.
And just kind of, I mean, you're best to tell the story, but for people who don't know, why don't you start kind of from the beginning of where she entered the company and how that all kind of came to pass and how quickly it moved, from, start to a massive first record.
Yeah. So Kels, gosh, I love her. She kind of had a roundabout way. She actually got a publishing deal with Black River. Mm-hmm. So she was a songwriter first, and then they upstreamed it to an artist deal. So she actually came in kind of through the back door, and before a whole team was formed around her. And Black River brought it to us as an option. They were shopping around for managers, and Fletch and I met with her and the rest of our team and just kind of hit it off with her. She was 19, which is crazy.
Yep.
And so, she ended up going with us. And I mean, none of us could have been prepared for how quickly and what the journey was going to look like. Because we were only 6 months old as Iconic company. And we were brand new as a company. So there's only 3 of us at the time, which is crazy. And so we signed her, and I think literally within 3 or 4 months, she had her first #1, because we signed her when she was just starting radio tour.
So the record was made.
Crazy.
She was starting the tour, starting the radio tour. Yeah. The first single just blew wide open, and then it was just one after the next.
And I think, timing, I think, is everything, because I have a lot of friends who are managers and have worked their ass off for 10 years. and didn't get to see half the things I got to see just because of timing. And then you hear the Chris Stapleton stories where it takes 10 years for him to get to that level. Right. So it's a very rare occurrence that you can't predict because everyone's working hard. But I think the climate at that time for women, especially in country music, there was a need for someone to break that pattern of male dominance. And, you know, Kelsey's single, she was the first female to have her debut single go number 1 in 90 years since Carrie Underwood's Jesus Take the Wheel.
I know. And unbelievable stats on the whole project. So I want to talk about that project, but I want to talk about it from a management point of view. I want to talk about it through your eyes. Because Musicians Council is about learning the business. And part of what's cool about this organization is you can come here if you want to learn how to be a manager. You know, this is not just for musicians, it's for people that want to get in the music industry. And so much of what interests me about this story is you were just starting and she was just starting. Mm-hmm. And tell me what that was like.
It was special because you didn't know what you didn't know, and you weren't afraid on all fronts. I think when overthinking and the way it's always been comes into play, it kind of obstructs creativity. That's a very existential kind of statement, but I really think there's something to being a little naive that's actually good. You have to learn really quick when things are flying at you that quickly. So I think having tenacity and resilience is really important as a manager.
Do you remember some of the first things that flew at you?
That's a hard question.
What was the first year like? Do you remember just kind of navigating that first year?
Yeah. It was a lot of travel. It was saying yes to a lot of things. That's one thing I think that also attributed to Kelsey's success is she was so trusting and willing to do everything. Mm-hmm. And I think that broadened her accessibility and marketability where she was seen everywhere all of a sudden, all at once. And it's because she said yes a lot. And granted, there's a time to say no, but I think at that beginning stage, she just has this open aura of making you feel like she's your friend. Right. And that accessibility at first with her fans, with her colleagues, I think was huge. So that said, you know, there was a lot of meetings, a lot of radio meetings. There were a lot of shows. I mean, touring was a whole nother thing to catch up to speed where her career was going.
And how much do you have to be involved in that part?
I'll never forget her number 1 party we had at Fletcher's house. He intentionally invited every single person that touched her project because he wanted her to see how many people it took. And there were 80 people in the room.
Wow.
Yeah. So as a manager, you know, I have to credit the whole team, obviously, because you're the delegator. Like, you're like, you do this, cool, yes, no, go. You know, like, you're not the expertise in every field. You can't be. That's impossible. You know?
So let's talk about it. I was going to come to building a team later, but you know,
sorry, keep going.
No, that's great. You know, building a team is a huge thing.
Yeah.
Before we go there though, let's talk about, you know, just kind of the process of getting an artist out on the road, mm-hmm. and what kind of day-to-day work is involved in it. What were your sort of day-to-day activities with her?
Yeah. So it was cool. As a management company, we set it up really uniquely, and that was totally because of Fletcher. He recognized that not every person can be an expert in every element of an artist's career, which a manager is expected to be a lot of times. Mm-hmm. And so he hired myself and my colleague, Brian, who came from CAA. We both had touring background, but he had a longer experience as an agent. And he was really, really well equipped on that front. Like, I'm more the creative side, and he was very much so like the touring guy.
Right.
So a lot on Kelsey's touring front, he handled logistically. And really what that is, you know, from receiving an offer from an agent, challenging parts of the deal and making sure you confirm it where your overhead is going to be covered. Because that from the agency world, there's so much once a deal is locked in that has to happen. And the tour manager is essential because they're in charge of your crew. And then you have the whole band element, you know, like music direction, tracks, like the flow of
Were
the
you
show.
involved in all of those components of, you know,
Yeah.
putting those things together and being responsible for making sure they were in order as, you know, tours would begin, tours would end? What about, you know, hiring things like, you know, stage design and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so you would bring on an LD, a lighting director, and a music director, and they would kind of work hand in hand. We would sit down with Kelsey, and Kelsey always had a really big vision for her live show. She wanted the sparkle. She wanted the big lights. She wanted to go up on one of those elevators. You know, like that's her goal, a stadium, which she's actually doing this year, which is cool. And so I think it starts with the artist to cast the vision, and then you bring in the people that can help facilitate and execute what it's going to look like. But yeah, as far as approval and assets and like going through the detail work of it, that ran all through us.
So, you know, reality is Kelsey's a really unusual character in the music industry. Having a team like that all around her. And I want to talk about building a team. We'll get into all that. But first, I kind of just want to establish that that's an unusual thing in the modern world, especially for a 19-year-old songwriter to go from being a writer, who there's a ton of just in Nashville who are great writers at 19, to all of a sudden having this team all around you to help with everything. And, you know, the way the modern world works is artists are supposed to be their own writer, their own publisher, their own label. They're supposed to do their own marketing. They're supposed to do their own PR. They're supposed to do their own styling. They're supposed to do their own LD work. They're supposed to book their shows. They're supposed to carry their gear. I mean, they're supposed to do everything.
Yeah.
Is it realistic? I mean, how do you, when you take on a smaller artist, because, you know, you worked with other people outside of Kelsey, you know, a whole group of people. How do you start to apply those things to an artist on a much smaller scale and help them, you know, kind of have that facility?
Totally. And that's a big question. And I think everyone's journey looks so different, and that timing and financing looks so different for everyone. But I love that beginning stage where they do have to do a lot on their own, because you're going to have to know how much to value those people that come in and end up doing that later for you, you know? And as far as like, I am a big believer of, and I think Kels did this really well, where she just has the spirit that makes you want her to win. Like, if you can present yourself in a professional role or as an artist, if you can get people to root for you, you can have a lot more wiggle room on the logistic side of, you know, getting help. I just think there is a manner of carrying yourself that you can get a lot further with help in your community and people that believe in you. I think that's huge, to be able to.
It's so not anything that where I was going, and that is such great advice, and so typical of you. But I think it's great advice because you don't have any resources. You're resource free, and you've got a mountain in front of you to deal with. And people actually do care about all that stuff. You are being watched for all those things. I mean, am I right? Do you think labels are watching for how well you're styled and how well you're packaged and how well your music actually sounds? Produced yourself and how marketable you are and all those things.
So my 3 checklists, I was actually doing this yesterday with a friend. And my 3 things, if I'm sent an artist that I look up, is I first pull up a YouTube, a live performance. So it's like, okay, what's behind all the process? Like, where's the raw talent? I look at their Instagram because I'm a huge brand marketing brain. Like, I just love that stuff. And if you give me a feeling from that, like, then you have an aura about you. And then actually listening to the song. And, I think there's people that, some of them lie about hearing demos and, oh, I can hear past a demo, but they really don't. They want to hear a final produced version. I do feel like, because I come from a cappella, like, I really do hear those parts. So I trust myself to hear demos and see the vision, but I almost would say, unless that person has a musical background themselves, I wouldn't trust that they're okay hearing just a demo. I think they want to hear a final product. So those are the 3 elements that I really look for to get before meeting a person in person and getting a presence from them. Those are the things that on a computer I kind of evaluate. Hey, I think this is really great, because they check all those things and they look well done. And you understand that they don't have a massive team, but I think it's a catch-22, because it's like, you don't want to take advantage of your friends, right? But if you can find a creative community around you, and I am a huge believer in bringing people along the journey with you that help with you in whatever capacity you can, because sometimes it's beyond you. But I do think, like, people like to invest in something creative and cool if they believe in it.
Right. I totally agree with you. And building a team is, like I said, it's one conversation to have with a Kelsea Ballerini. It's a whole nother conversation, and it's great to hear those stories, but it's much more important to hear how you can do it on your own. Just those basic principles of start with yourself, put out the best you can put out, so people will actually want to become a team around you. And then, part of being a team is giving back. I mean, one of the things, I've spent my entire life working with artists, and one of the things that is tricky about it is artists, particularly artists who have a lot of star power, are not always as sensitive to everybody else around them in the room as maybe other musicians tend to be super sensitive people. Where and I don't want to be too stereotypical here, but it is important to realize that with that sort of star power comes a lot of people that focus on you. You also have to remember to give back to them, because if you want them to become a team around you and you don't have a whole lot of resources other than that star power, your collateral is giving back to them and helping them too. And I do find that one of the things I see in the young music community is wanting a lot of help, but not necessarily always, being cognizant of how much am I giving back? Am I giving back an equal amount or even more than I'm getting? Because I think that balance is when you start to really hit a great stride, when you're doing great things for other people too.
Man, it's tricky. Like, I empathize with the artist, because you're constantly getting pulled at or wanting things from, right? Like, people want a lot from you. And so there is an element of protecting that with an artist, but then there is the other side where, with your intimate people, like, how you treat them is everything. And I've seen a lot of young artists, like you said, outside of people I've even worked with, just kind of take that for granted, or I don't know, like, there's a lack of loyalty in this industry, period. And that's just hard to navigate. And one thing that I've learned in a lot of hard ways is I've seen moments where I can get hurt by that, because I have given so much to whoever, right? Even someone I'm not invested in career-wise. And that can make you hard very easily. And then you see it creep into your personal life. And I had to make a decision to stay soft, and it might hurt a lot, but at least I won't lose that part of myself, And I think if an artist can see humans behind each agenda, because really we all can use each other for something. like, this is a business, and it's tough. It's the toughest business when it comes to personal relationships, because it is creative, and it's a lot looser than like going into a suit kind of job.
Yeah.
There's not that boundary of like, this is my work life, this is my personal life.
Right.
So it can get really confusing, but I think at the end of the day, if we all just see each other as humans, I think there's a lot more empathy and thankfulness that can happen.
I totally agree with you. So I think, two key things so far, and one of them you brought up before has actually been a common thread and common theme I'm hearing from a lot of our experts. Say yes.
Mm-hmm.
And these two things kind of do go together, because part of, that spirit of building a community and giving back and being that positive influence that brings people together, a lot of that is about saying yes. People get really bored of somebody who just keeps saying no.
Totally.
It's extremely frustrating to the team around you.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody who, particularly if you get the sense that it's somebody who takes pleasure in saying no. It's extremely hard to keep rallying around that person. It's very easy when there's a lot of money involved and a job involved. It's very difficult when it's your hard work and your time, and you're getting out of bed at 11 o'clock after you just crawled in bed because you forgot, they asked you to do one more thing that'll really help tomorrow. And you're like, ooh. But you really want to have, be that person who is inspiring. And I think that's great. Hey, I want to come back and I want to talk to you about two more things. Cool. So let's take a break and we'll come back and we'll talk more with Allie Venable.